Hello, everyone, and welcome to the next installment on the Cold War. And it's going from bad to worse. Both sides have had a really difficult time of it recently. We've just had the Hungarian uprising, which has caused a bad feeling with America. And now we're back with another crisis in Berlin. So the crisis itself is quite simple. The only thing tricky about it is obviously this is the second crisis we've had in Berlin, and both exam boards refer to them as the Berlin crisis of either 1958 or 1948. So the only thing that is different is the date. So anytime you're in the exam, you see Berlin, a red flag needs to start waving in your brain because it is very easy to write the wrong crisis. And that's the last thing I want for any of you is to come out and talk to other people and realize you've done the wrong one. But that won't happen because you're aware it's a real problem. Anytime you see Berlin, double check those dates. So by the end of the lesson today, you can explain the causes of the Berlin Ultimatum. I'll explain what that is in a bit, and the outcome of the Berlin summits. So we are back to Berlin. We are looking at some prior knowledge. We are reminding ourselves, what can you remember about Berlin's location geographically? What had happened to it in 1945, just after World War II? What was the Berlin crisis of 1948? We've already done one crisis. What was that all about? So pause the video, have a go at answering those. Okay, so do we remember Berlin's location? It's in the map, you can see that it's right in the middle of the red zone, which was the part of Germany controlled by the Soviets. Now, the other three countries, Britain, America, and France, really had an issue with that. They didn't like that Russia got the capital city. If you look at the map, you can see why Russia got it because it is right in the middle of that zone. It's the closest to the Russian border or the border with Poland there. So there was no way to put Berlin in anyone else's zone, but the other three couldn't accept it. So they said they really don't like it being in the middle of the Soviet zone. So the answer to question two, they divide it in four as well, which is why when you can see on the map, right in the middle of that red zone, you can see those little blue, green, yellow dots. Those are the parts of Berlin that are divided amongst the other three countries. So the Berlin crisis of 1948, that's when Stalin does the blockade. So Stalin tries his luck, decides if he blockades or cuts off access to those bits of Berlin, were the other three countries just going to give up and be like, it's more trouble than it's worth, you just have all of Berlin? And as we saw in the lesson, the answer is absolutely no. They don't do that. They do everything they can and they manage to hang on to their sector of Berlin. So that's the Berlin crisis of 48 when Stalin stops all the supplies getting in to those British, French, American sections of Berlin. They respond with the airlift and they airlift all the supplies in. So there we are, little circle round Berlin. So we're 1958, and there are real issues for the Soviets with East Germany and with Berlin. So we're going to look at the issue of East Germans, so people under Soviet control, Germans under Soviet control, defecting. What that means is leaving the country, going to a different one. So there are lots of reasons why East Germans are leaving. And the main one is the Stasi, who are the East German secret police. These guys were absolutely terrifying. They drove around in black vans with no markings on them. They turned up at your house. They dragged you out. People didn't see you again. You went to prison for years and years, in some cases, decades. Sometimes you've done something wrong, sometimes you haven't. So they were a real figure of fear. And you couldn't argue back. You couldn't go and be like, I think the Stasi arrested my relative wrongly. There was nothing you could do about it. There's also, even if the Stasi leave you alone, just a low standard of living compared to the West. So the houses weren't as nice, there weren't as many luxury goods. So day-to-day life wasn't as good as it was in the West. Some officials are really corrupt. So some of the people in charge, they're taking bribes, they're being unfair. So some people in East Germany very happy to be there, but a lot aren't. So a lot would rather go to the West. If you want to leave for the West, it's actually quite easy at this time. So you're living in East Germany, all you do, you travel to Berlin, you cross over in Berlin into the Allied sections, so the capitalist sections, and then you take a flight out of there to West Germany, America, Britain, wherever it is you want to go. So getting out of East Germany at this time, very straightforward. Lots of people do that. 3 million people, which is sixth of the population. So by the time of this crisis, 1 in 6 East Germans had left the country. And many of these are the very most skilled and educated people. So this is a problem for Khrushchev, leader of the Soviets, for a number of reasons. Number one, it's really embarrassing. So he's going around the world going, communism is amazing, countries should become communist. And people are like, well, if it's so amazing, how come a sixth of your population have left? Fair point. Many of those who leave are the most educated or skilled, so they can get higher wages in the West for doing the same job. So you're a doctor, a lawyer, something like that. You're going to get a lot more money for the same work if you just move over to West Germany. But obviously, for the Soviets, they're behind in East Germany. This was damaging to the economy. They were losing those educated, those skilled workers. And Khrushchev, who was a very suspicious man, his main concern, if it's that easy for people to get out, it's also super easy for people to get in. Spies. It was so easy to get spies into East Germany. You just do the reverse journey. You go to West Berlin, you fly into one of the West Berlin airports, and then you just cross over into East Berlin. And from there, you can go to all of East Germany. So Berlin is a real issue for Khrushchev for lots of reasons. So as a result, he decides he's had enough. And so he issues what is called the Berlin Ultimatum. The good news is the only thing complicated about it is its name. Once you get your head around what an ultimatum is, it's really nice and simple. So an ultimatum is when someone says, you need to do this or else. And then there's some threat. Okay. So as a teacher, I frequently say, you need to do your homework or else there will be a detention. That's me giving an ultimatum. You have to do what I say or else this will happen. So Khrushchev is giving an ultimatum about Berlin. Do this or else to the West. And what he's saying, I demand all Western troops are removed from Berlin within 6 months. So no soldiers. All Berlin should be a free city controlled by the Soviet Union. So actually his ultimatum, really nice and simple there. Get out of Berlin or else. So get rid of the American sector and the British and the French. All of them have to leave. Berlin is going to be totally controlled by the Soviets. And we can see that's really going to solve Khrushchev's problem. So people won't be able to leave East Germany through Berlin, spies won't get in. So Khrushchev's ultimatum to the West, leave Berlin or else. So America is not just going to do that. Excuse me. So America's the driving force behind the Allies. And America is like, absolutely not. We don't get told what to do. We certainly don't respond to ultimatums demanding we do things or else. So what do countries do if they have an issue and want to resolve it? That's right, they have meetings. So there is another section of meetings. They're known as summits. So there are 4 between 59 and 61. So they're known as the Berlin meetings or the Berlin summits because they're all about Berlin. So I have come up with a way of remembering the four and where they are. So just stick with it. Okay, so thinking of the pictures, we've got a girl cat, doesn't purr in Vienna because I couldn't think of anything else but Vienna. So, girl cat don't purr in Vienna reminds you of the four places: Geneva, Camp David, Paris, Vienna. That's how I remember it. You can, I'm sure, come up with a better one for that, but that's how I remember the order. So they meet first in Geneva, then they go to Camp David, which is in America. It's the president's sort of holiday home. Another one in Paris and one in Vienna. So we just need to finish off looking at what happens at these summits. So Geneva, 1955. It's actually really positive. First time they've met up since the wartime conferences, and it's sometimes referred to as Geneva spirit, a kind of sense of let's get together, let's sort of get on with things. You can see there the meeting at Camp David. So that's Eisenhower and that's Khrushchev. They meet, they shake hands, there's lots of smiles. They're making a point that actually they are sort of getting on and trying to work together. Then it all goes horribly, horribly wrong. So they're due to meet in Paris. And just before, one of the American spy planes is shot down by the Russians over Russian territory. So Russia's absolutely allowed to shoot down this spy plane. America tries to kind of brazen it out. They're like, no, 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 the plane isn't spying. We're really sorry. It's a weather plane. It was just trying to see like the frontal systems, what kind of weather America did expect. And it just kind of went a bit, of course, we are super sorry. At which point Russia were like, yeah, the pilot survived and we've interviewed him and he's confessed to spying. And it was just super embarrassing for America that they were caught in this lie. Russia is outraged. Russia demands America apologizes. We've caught you spying. We've caught one of your spies. You can see his picture there. That is Francis Gary Powers, who is eventually returned to America a couple of years later. America's attitude, you can kind of understand why. It's a bit like, we're not going to apologize, mainly because we know you spy on us. Like, yes, we spy and it's bad, but you do it too. If we're both doing it, why should we apologize to you? But it makes things really tense. So Paris is a bit of a low point. And then Khrushchev thinks all of his Christmases has come at once because there is an election in America. And in comes the gentleman on the right of the picture, who is JFK. So John Fitzgerald Kennedy, he comes in an election in 1960. JFK is the youngest president to be elected at this point, so he's very young. He's also not had that much political experience. He's been a senator, but that's not, presidents tend to have more experience than that. They tend to be vice presidents, they tend to be governors. We're not going to turn this into a discussion on US politics. But what we need to know is JFK is seen as young and inexperienced. Khrushchev loves this appointment. He thinks he can push JFK around. So, as a consequence, there is huge tensions. Khrushchev goes into the meeting trying to bully Kennedy, trying to push him around. Kennedy is made of sterner stuff. Kennedy is like, absolutely not. I'm not going to do anything. And we leave it with Kennedy going, I am not going to follow the Berlin Ultimatum. We are not leaving Berlin. What are you going to do about it? And what Khrushchev is going to do about it is what we're going to look at next lesson.